Welcome to another episode of the Flag Stays Down podcast. Still in the Hunt edition and Matt's Gone edition. We've been talking about it for weeks, but Parker, it's just us now. Happy Mother's Day to you and your wife, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, man. Happy Mother's Day to Nicole as well, and special shout out to Molly. Giving birth a few days before the big holiday. Matt's better half. So, yeah, shout out to the Maciejewskis. Exciting times over there. They had a healthy little baby boy, and it sounds like everyone's doing well there. So always exciting time. I've never gone through the second child part, and you just have the one right now. So I'm sure it's mixes of the same and some slight differences of how things go. And I'm sure it'll be fun for their now oldest to meet the little guy and everything like that. But I did think it's funny, Andy. We all have boys. We're now 4 for 4 with bringing boys into this world, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah. No, pretty soon put together a starting 11, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Mother's Day was good. Weekend was good. I feel like I spent most of my day in the kitchen today, as I like to do on holidays. But started the day off making breakfast for the wife, and then just kind of meal prepping and doing some stuff, poking around. So it was a fun weekend, and then I got to spend some time outside weeding my backyard, which gets crazy every year. So before it gets too hot outside, I have to get out in the morning. But yeah, kind of a rough way to start the day with the Newcastle match, but we'll get into that in a bit. How are you? How was your day? How was your weekend?
Yeah, I said it last week, but welcome to White Guys in Their 30s podcast. Weed in the backyard. Love it.
Dude, I actually have an excuse. Like, we have an HOA here, and so at least our front, like if our front's not pristine, we potentially get fined for it. So I try very hard to make my my front yard look presentable, and then what I can do in the back, just try to make it everything look all right. So
I understand that. I remember that from house living. I'm almost right there with you. I spent the weekend painting the hallway that I've been working on for 3 weeks. So it's almost there. It needs about one more coat, and then I'm into the main living area. So but man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through a whole podcast. We took my mom and my dad and my sister out to Maggiano's for dinner. For Mother's Day, they got it's a pre-selected menu, 4 courses, 4 entrees per table, big servings. You get all the appies, you get all the desserts. Oh man, I think I probably had a 10,000 calorie dinner. So I'm enjoying my Central Standard old fashioned right now, and we'll see if I make it an hour.
Oh boy, I think you got it in you, man. You can just fight through the pain.
Meat sweats.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll talk about it now. We lost 2-0 away to Newcastle, which it hurts. But the more I think about it, the more we've been talking about this one being chalked up as drop points for weeks. We're sitting 6th at the moment. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at last year's table, 5th. Thank you. It's like, why does it have United in 8th? That's last year's table. It's sitting 5th on 63 points, still only 3 points off of 3rd. With United and Forest coming up. We'll start with the match itself before we start speculating. But Parker, what's your big takeaway?
Big takeaway, it was, I think I say this a fair amount, so it's not going to sound surprising to anybody that listens consistently, but like this was very much a figure out what we're made of kind of a game. It's away at St. James's Park. What I've heard is one of the like truly special grounds in the Premier League of fan support and just volume and cheering and chants and everything that you can bring to the Premier League. It's one of the better ones that I've heard of. So atmosphere, and then in a very high stakes game. So I think this for our young crew was very much a learning game, very much we're not used to this kind of atmosphere environment, and we'll see how they fare. And we saw how they fared, and I think you accused me, Andy, last week of moving the goalposts, and I'm not going to talk about why you said that. But if there was no nuance, if there was no story behind the story, then there would be no need for you and I to get on this podcast every week and talk about what we saw and why we saw it, right? So there is nuance. There is, through your eyes versus through my eyes versus through Twitter's eyes versus through Matt's, right? Like there is some of that to be said here. And yeah, I think it's just a really, it was telling to see kind of how the first 38 went, up until the incident, we'll call it the incident, and then to see how we got to halftime and then how we came out of halftime. There's much more to this game than Newcastle scored early, Jackson got a red card, Newcastle wins 2-0. There's a lot more there than that, and I think the second half we played better than the first half, which is wild, playing down a man away on the road, right? And I don't think Newcastle's just completely turned it off either. I think we turned it up, and I think we met them. And I think if we have 11 guys, we could have really taken it to them. And I think there's still a version of that team that had a couple of very solid chances to score and make at least a draw out of that, which would have felt like a win down a man. So yeah, I think this is some bulletin board material for the future, learning moments for our guys. There was some, slight implosions, I'll call them, like some of our guys getting a little heated about the kind of how the match went, which I like. I like that they're upset by how things went, and I think that frustration is something that we need to kind of breed success in the future. We still have the youngest team in the Premier League. We still have a crop of guys that are just figuring things out. We'll talk specifically on Jackson later, but like a lot of people, are still figuring this whole thing out. So yeah, it was interesting. It was nuanced. There was a lot to it, and wild that I watched a second half that we felt more competitive than a first half when we're down a man in the second. It's just it's a completely bonkers thing in my brain, and I still can't make heads or tails of why we couldn't come out and compete from the opening whistle. But that's kind of what I saw, and kind of what happened in my brain. What about you?
Yeah, and I think that's all fair. And there are points during this season where we look better when we're under control and in control of the game. I forgot. I think it was Opta put out a review of Chelsea this year that they tend to thrive in the 50 to 70% possession range, and when it's over X amount of passes, but under X amount of passes. I don't remember exactly what the specifics were, but I think we also tend to thrive when there's chaos ball. When we play controlled chaos ball, not when it's shit hitting the fan left and right, because then you see those implosions. Because I agree, the second half it was good. It was madness. I guess my biggest takeaway, because my biggest takeaway was similar to yours, but my other takeaway was we had this issue with the referee last year, John Brooks, of inconsistency, seemingly swayed. I can't remember. It might have been Newcastle, or maybe it was we were playing Liverpool last year. It was one of those up north teams, and it seemed like the crowd was swaying him at every moment. And this was before we went on that win streak last year. The Tonali goal, while well taken, and it was a heck of a way to keep fighting by Newcastle. Anthony Gordon, that should have been called back. Big old flop at the beginning of that. He should have been given a yellow there. There's the red card for Jackson, which, as a fan looking at it, yes, red card. We all saw it. He doesn't make that decision in real time, which boggled my mind. And we've seen obvious reds not get called with VAR, or it's reviewed and then not given. That we've famously saw that happen against us. Just more inconsistent officiating. John Brooks consistently inconsistent yet again. And it boggles my mind that the FA isn't putting their top guys in the top matches. Not that I want Anthony Taylor, but you're going to get a pretty well called game with Anthony Taylor. You're going to get your one or two big calls that go against you, right? But overall, you know what you're getting on him. John Brooks is a shit show, and I don't care to see him again.
It's funny. It's funny that your take is on the ref because I didn't see as much like ref inconsistency. What is very apparent when we play is we are a much more physical team than I think a lot of people talk about us as. We put in some pretty crunching tackles, like Levi Colwell, Moises Caicedo, Trev puts in some every so often, like Lavia puts like the middle of the pack. You know, we put in some pretty hard nosed tackles, and so I was kind of surprised we didn't walk away with more yellows, to be completely honest. And the yellows that we got were for, you know, dissent or for kind of yelling at the refs. So I find that quite intriguing there. One comment that I wanted to make, because it stood out, I feel like it was the first time Tim Howard was ever nice to us. I don't watch a lot of halftime talk because I can't stand it for the most part. Tim Howard didn't think it was a penalty, and he gave he kind of said the way Nico jumped. He's like, this happens all the time when center forwards do this and they jump, and Nico was anticipating the defender to jump alongside, and then it's shoulder to shoulder contact, and that elbow doesn't get up and hit him in the head if he jumps. So because he sort of mistimed his jump, I don't think Nico tried to do anything. I think like that's just something that people do. I think of it a lot like basketball with boxing out and going for rebounds. Like sometimes your arm is going up for a rebound and it catches somebody. Like it's not intentional. It's you got your eyes on one thing and you're trying to do another, and stuff happens. So I think it's unfortunate. Like on the other foot, I feel like if Nico doesn't like contest for balls like that, he's getting roasted in the comments too. What is Nico doing? Why isn't he competing for some of these long balls that are going up? And they're just conceding possession. Sanchez is booting long, and Nico's not fighting for it. Like if he's not doing that, then he's getting roasted the same way. People talk about his decision making, and I feel like because he has a reputation of not always making the best decisions, he's going to have this one go against him on his record. If it was our smartest player and he makes that error, I don't think they get roasted as much. But because it's Nico, I think he's getting, kind of filleted for it as not understanding the moment, not understanding the situation we're in. Look, if there's 1,000 red cards that you can kind of put on where they're blatant and they're intentional and they're stupid. If Nico throws a punch at a guy, right? Like if he does something truly dumb, I get it. But he made what I thought was a footballing play for that ball to try to win a header. Like he didn't try to throw an elbow there. So is it slightly foolish? Sure. Is it being over exaggerated because of the situation and because it's Nico? I think that's absolutely true.
Well, and he is a guy who has a history of picking up cards at Chelsea Football Club. There was that crackdown. Was that last year or was that earlier this year on talking to the ref?
It's last year.
Yeah, last year. This year was the kicking the ball away on a dead ball, right? And both years, multiple cards for those issues. It's like you don't learn. Now, I did see somebody say today something to the effect of, "Hey, Nico's not a young guy anymore. Like he needs to know better. He needs to do better." Nico's 23, which is young, right? I mean, there's a whole for international teams. There's a whole division of that's not even full senior yet. It's a U23. There was the joke this week about Cole Palmer and Reggie Walsh. Like, hey man, you're a senior on this team now. Look how old you are compared to Reggie Walsh. And Cole Palmer goes, well, shit, how old does that make you? He's the thing. Cole Palmer and Nico Jackson are the same age. I don't know. I got the sense, and I've gotten the sense over the last couple of weeks that it's kind of the end of days for Nico Jackson at this club. We talked a lot about Christopher Nkunku's body language earlier this year. And I'm seeing a lot of the same out of Nico. When he's subbed off, sulking, walks real slow the long way around the pitch. he he doesn't do the Rom thumbs up like he used to all the time. Um, it's a lot of throwing his hands up when a ball doesn't get played exactly to him. I think being a young guy, I'm not saying he's an old guy, but being a young guy, all the talk of Yorkis, Osimhen, Delap, Chesko, all these guys possibly coming in, big money transfer signings, and all the talk of we need somebody who's a 20-goal striker. We need consistency. We need somebody with experience. I think that's gotten to Nico. I think his ego is bruised. And I don't know if he's ready to be a backup. I think he tasted success very early. He started his second half of the season at Villarreal 2 years ago after coming up from the B team and has never looked back. Starter in La Liga every single week. Starter in the Premier League every single week. We sold all the depth around him this year for some fucking stupid reason. I don't think he's going to want to go back to being a reserve, being a backup, being a bench player, being a rotational player. Man, I mean, he's out through the end of this year plus the first game of next year on this red card. I think we might have seen Nico Jackson for the last time in a Chelsea kit.
So I'm gonna take this back to you because that's a bold statement, and I want to know how you feel. Do you want that to be the case? Do you want us to sell Nico Jackson in the summer, or do you want him to come back?
I would like him to come back. I think he still has a lot of growing to do. I mentioned in our group chat this morning that I think he's got a Dominic Solanke type career in front of him. He's not going to be world beater. He's not going to be Didier Drogba. I'm getting a little sick of that comparison. But I think maybe an Ollie Watkins kind of career. I think he absolutely could have kind of a bloomer in his late 20s, mid to late 20s, and be real consistent. But I think he has to learn a lot of the game. And I think he can do that at Chelsea. I think there's absolutely room for that, especially if you bring in a striker who has experience, who has played in the Champions League, who has played for a top club in a top league, somebody who just knows how to do it, right? But that's all in a perfect world. I know Nico's a head case. I know Nico's kind of like Noni Madueke. We talked last week about the all emotion team, and I think he's in team Noni. You can only have so many of those guys on the roster. So again, in a vacuum, bring them back. If you can go get a couple strikers for good money that are consistent, send them out.
See, this is where it gets really interesting to me because I think the only reason you sign a striker that young on a long-term deal and extend it 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, I think we extended his deal 2 years. I think he's with us for till 34 or something. Like it's a long ways out. I don't know the exact number. I think the only reason you sign a deal like that is because of not what you bring to us today, but what you bring to us tomorrow and the next day and the next day. It's definitely not a short-term play. I don't know what we could get for him in the open market. I think it's highly contingent on what you can do with him in the open market. But I think he would do really. I think he has a chance. Let me back up my statement before I make it. I think he has a chance to do really well underneath a striker, because we are almost certainly going to be in European football next year in either the Champions League or the Europa League, and there's going to be more squad rotation needed in what we bring to our day to day. I think everyone's hope is that we can make it farther in the FA Cup, in the community, all of the cups, all of the things, Carabao Cup, whatever the hell they call those things now. But we've got a lot of matches ahead of us. He can still play in the Club World Cup. He can still play in the final of the Conference League. Like, I think a guy like him, really can use a role model, someone who is older, more experienced, 27, 28 years old, to just really model like what that behavior looks like in training, in matches, kind of have him as a mentor. And like, he's going to need to take an ego hit for this to work. You have to kind of take some humble pie here of, I'm 23. I'm not good enough to be the absolute guy every single week for this club. I got a lot of learning to do. But I think if he could do it, he's got a lot of the raw to make, to be able to contribute long term when he is 26, 27, 28, 29, when he is in the sort of the prime of his career. If I'm a betting man, I don't think he gets there. I don't think he has the emotional growth trajectory to be able to do that. But I've seen kind of crazier things happen. And I still like have this tiny sliver of hope that he could. I think about, not the best example, but I'm going to make it anyway just because it's the first one that came to my head. But like, just imagine how much Levi Colwell learned from Thiago Silva. And I'm not saying Levi Colwell's a head case that needed the correction, and that's where the comparison breaks down. And I'm not trying to say that, but just imagine how much he learned from Thiago Silva, the way Thiago embodied the position, the way he talked to his team, the way he kind of commanded his troops, the way he led a locker room, a lot of those things. I just think you need to watch someone do it, and be able to kind of mimic that behavior, and you kind of mimic it while you're still learning it, and then you figure out your own style as you kind of grow into it, as you do it on your own. But you have to have a role model in that world.
So I look at our striker depth.
What's striker depth?
Exactly. Nico Jackson signed until 2033. And Nkunku's gone. Reports this week that it's reached a breaking point. He'll be gone. Mark Gu, supposedly coming back from injury, possibly this week, is what I'm hearing. Which would be just great timing.
Very.
So you got him. David Datro Fofana, still returning from injury. And then Shim Moheka, who looked decent in his little cameo against Djurgården this past week. 17 years old. You're right. You need somebody who has done it, who can show these guys how to do it. But with PSR, you're going to have to fund that somehow. Jackson was signed for 37 million euros. I think the easy one to sell is Mark Gu, because it was 5 mil that they paid for him. Big return on investment there. I think he's worth probably 20 right now. Datro Fofana, you signed for 8. That one's probably a wash. That one you probably just bring back because there's nothing else. But I think Jackson might be gone. Signed him for 37. I'd say you could probably get 50 for him at the moment. He's 23. He's shown he can do it in the Premier League. And Liam Delap's release clause is 30 million. So there's no way there, if you get Delap, you're only bringing in Delap. I think there's another striker being brought in then too. So if you can get Delap and one of the other ones I've mentioned 5 times on this pod already for a combined 100 mil, Nico Jackson funds half of that. I mean, I wouldn't object.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be in the same seat. I think it is highly contingent on who you bring in to replace. Because if it is just a straight swap for Delap, I think we're in a similar position than we were this year. You can make arguments for Delap. You can make arguments for Jackson, who's better, who had a better season, all of those things. But the point is, we still are one striker deep and, need some depth. We also, again, Delap isn't perfect. He had a good season, but he might regress in form as well. And with the bright lights of Chelsea, we've seen a lot of people step up into Chelsea and just get flambéed in the press and just absolutely crumble under the pressure of what this club is. We have expectations, we have a standard, we have all of those things. So I just Delap had a breakout year. We had the same fears about like an Osimhen having one breakout season and not in the Premier League, right? Just, can you keep doing it? Can you do it again?
So what's your ideal at striker for next year? Obviously, you can certainly remain status quo. Jackson, Gu, Fofana, all under contract. But what is an ideal number 9 center forward position look like for you going into next year?
Yeah. I think Gyökeres is like the top, I don't know if I'm saying that right, the top kind of prospect for the money. I like his game. I think the Osimhen problem is salary, if I'm not mistaken, of what his demands are there. And I know this sounds so cliche, so I hate saying it, but like if a guy's fighting about salary before he does a damn thing for the club, like that's red flags to me. Like I don't like that. Either you're with us or you're not. And you can look at what everyone else fucking makes on our team. And when dudes like Mike Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez and Cole Palmer are making 120 and you're demanding 250 or whatever the numbers are, like you're asking for double of what our top guys are getting paid. I think that's going to cause more problems than it will solve problems. So, and then it's like if we can get Delap, then I think Nico goes to your earlier kind of comment about getting those two for a combined 100, and then Nico can fund most of that or some of that. Um, Otherwise, I think it's Nico and Gilkers, and I'm all right
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, and I think that's fair. Again, in a perfect world, I see it Nico and someone. But it'll be interesting to see how him and his agent react to that this summer. I've always liked Chesko. I believe he's with RB Leipzig now. Um, but that scares me. I know this is his first year in the Bundesliga, but Bundesliga strikers, I think I have PTSD for. Osimhen has now been in Turkey for a year. Napoli, by the way, about to win the league in Italy without Osimhen. Gyökeres playing in Portugal, but he's got 100 goal contributions in the last year and a half.
Yeah, it seems like the dude's an absolute machine.
Yeah, and he's familiar with England because he came up I think through Coventry. I don't know. I don't think there's a necessarily right option, but like I said earlier, limiting the amount of head cases you have in this team, I think, is the best option. So if you're going to keep Noni, which I haven't seen any indication that he's out the door, even though we want it, or some of us want him out the door. I think Jackson is the one that goes out of those two.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And if he goes, I will like firmly say he dug his own grave on this one because of this situation. I already kind of half defended it, but he did get a red card in one of the biggest matches of the game, match day 36. So it's a tough one. Let me ask you, if there's a league outside of the Premier League that you are most keen on recruiting a striker from, who is it, or which league is it?
We seem to have the best luck with Liga On. Now we haven't signed a striker in a very long time out of Liga On, but for whatever reason, our scouts seem to be very good in France. Which actually, let me ask you this as a kind of a follow up. The rumor is that we are going to sign fellow Blue Co striker, first year striker at Strasbourg, Ermaguer, for I don't know, like 20 million pounds or something like that. Are you in favor of that? Is it more like a why, or is that signaling maybe Mark Yu going the other way and a loan, or what does it all mean?
What does it all mean? I mean, it means we have a feeder club that we have common ownership in, and yeah, it feels like it could be an accounting move somewhere. Just it could be a bookkeeping move. It could be a real move. I mean, I don't know much about this guy. I don't follow Strasbourg as close as you do, but um, it like it's as good as like kind of recalling a loan. It feels like where it's a handshake deal where we do good business with Strasbourg and we can kind of get people cheaper than open market, which is always nice. So yeah, I don't know. He feels like he would be a third string striker, no matter what the circumstance would be. He would be like a Datro Fofana had he stayed this year, kind of a guy. So I don't know. I'm only for it if guys can get minutes. I don't think anyone should stay on the team if they can't get more than 4 or 5 trots out in some meaningful ways. I don't want to see people be super subs in the 88th minute. I want to see guys go in and put in a solid at least 60, 65 in some matches where they can kind of get their feet underneath them. So unless it's that, then stay at Strasbourg or go somewhere else. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I see it as a swap, and it's going to be interesting to see where Chelsea and Strasbourg both line up in the European hierarchy here. If we're even able or allowed to to make any loans between the two clubs, but 100% could see Mark Gue going the other way to get 30 matches under his belt in league play. Boost that value, see if you got anything there. I thought he was great this year playing in the Conference League. I would like to see him a little bit more in the Premier League. I think he's got a future, and I think they're going to put it on display. So I could see it being, hey, we're going to take him because he's got talent, and we'll send you this guy, and you can do something with him.
Is that like a demotion then, going up to Chelsea and not playing, and then your value kind of tanks a little bit?
Well, I was going to ask you this about Strasbourg, because we're getting to that point of the year where we got to start looking at who's going there next year, if we're allowed to.
Yeah.
Santos, Petrovic, and who's the third there? Is it Caleb Wiley? No, he got recalled. We don't have a third there at the moment. So Petrovic and Santos coming back. You can loan up to 3. Nico Jackson did cross my mind for a loan to Strasbourg. Now, obviously, everything is up to the player accepting it, right? But what kind of player do you send to Strasbourg? We have a young team where a lot of the players are on very similar levels. There's not a lot of gap, unless you're, talking academy to first team. Who is absolutely not allowed to go to Strasbourg? I mean, Enzo Caicedo, right? I mean, those would be the two.
Yeah, Palmer.
But outside of that, is everyone else fair game?
No, I don't think so at all. And I think a lot of them are bad moves. Like, I think Nico Jackson to Strasbourg is a bad move. I don't like it at all. I think I don't think he'd do well, and because if it's a value boost prop, I don't think he does well. I think he probably puts up similar-ish numbers, 18 goal contributions a year kind of a thing, 20 goal contributions a year, which people are going to look at as worse than whatever he did 15 in the Premier League this year, whatever that number is. So I don't see it as a value boost play. I think he either plays for Chelsea or we sell him. Like, I think those are our only two options with him. And then guys like Noni, I just don't think they do well. Jadon Sancho doesn't do well. Like Cucurella, no. Gusto, no. James, no. Colwell, no.
So basically, if you're in the consistent first 15, 16 players off the books, but after that, kind of free game.
Sure. And I think goalie is the one that makes the most sense. We're incredibly deep at goalie, and we have to make some decisions at goalie. So I think one goalie for sure, and then maybe some of the youth. I think that the Reggie Walshes of the world or the Tyreek Georges of the world might have some success because they are still super young, 16, 18 years old, where they'd be playing in a league, getting consistent minutes, being one of the top players on the team. So I like that for them. That feels like a controlled loan. We've talked about loans and people not getting utilized as much as they should be in the loan deal. And I think if it's Strasbourg, I think we can pretty much guarantee that they get used the way that we want them to be used. Again, this is all under the caveat of we can do this, right? But if we can, then shared ownership, right? So we get to play our guys. And I think that works out really well for I'll call it the difference between the youth and the super youth of our team. The youth being the starting 11, and then the super youth kind of coming up behind them.
So Andre Santos was the kind of the key guy who bought him young out of South America. Had let's see, he was loaned to Forest, I think, shortly, and then went to Strasbourg and has blossomed there. Do any of these guys who we're bringing in over the summer, Kendry Paez, Estevao, Asugo, who we bought from someone, he's on loan at Las Palmas right now. Any of those guys heading to France next year?
I think they very easily could. I don't think Estevao does. I think he's the one of the of the crew that has his place kind of etched in it. I've already seen him interacting with the team on social media, and I think that there's some good vibes, and I think he's really excited to come and play. So I don't think he wants to go. I think he wants to play for Chelsea, and I think he wants to be what Lamine Yamal was for Barcelona. I know they're the same class, same age. So, and then everyone else is kind of up for debate. Yeah, I said kind of my no list of guys that played significant minutes for Chelsea, so I know that they can play significant minutes for Chelsea. Everyone else to me is a wild card and kind of a lottery ticket, as you've kind of called them in the past. Um, Santos, I don't know if we bring him back and have him, be a solid part of our team next year either. Like, I don't know how much it translates, but I do know it translates to higher value because wasn't Santos like the player of the league,
Yeah, young player of the year in Liga. Yep.
right? Like, I think that translates to super value, right? Like, you're now not an unproven prospect. You have an accolade behind you of what you can bring to the table. So if you can't find a place for him at Chelsea, he will definitely be sold for a nice profit margin.
See, and I don't worry about him. I think he's a part of the plans 100%. Um, the one that I was worried about was Kendry Pies, but just because I hadn't heard about him in a while, I knew he was injured at some point last year. Um, but the talks of Estevao kind of trumped him a little bit. I know Pies is playing in the Ecuadorian league, which is lesser than the Brazilian league, but man, this season he's played combined national team and club 75 matches with 22 goal contributions, played almost 4,500 minutes. Oh man, I I mean maybe you send him there for 6 months and see how he does and extend it from there, but that one surprised me because I thought he would be the shoe in. I thought maybe he had dropped off a little bit, but he is still tearing it up at a very young age in South America.
The problem with our team is who do you take out to put him in? Like, if you're fitting in Estevao and Paez into this team, like, who goes?
See, I don't know if anybody needs to because hear me out. Mudrik, for all we know, is dead, right? Um, and so your wingers obviously are Sancho that you don't know you're bringing back, Noni, who is streaky as hell, Tyreek George, who is still very young, Pedro Neto, I think is the only lock out of the group. That's kind of it. And Kunku's gonna be gone. João Felix is probably gonna be gone. Estevao, I think, slots in easily on the left, Neto on the right, or Noni on the right, or however you want to do that. Hayes is nice because he can play both wings and he can play that number 10 role, the Cole Palmer role, which we don't really have a backup for Cole Palmer now that João Felix is out the door, which is funny because the talk was, oh, those two can't play together, so we got to play one or the other. And now Cole Palmer plays every minute of every game.
And
I think
Kuku's the
there's
other like guy that could play that 10 role too. And he
exactly,
gone.
exactly. So I think there's room. Starters, maybe not, but there's room. Absolutely.
Okay. That's it's interesting. I think like when we go through our depth chart at the beginning of the year and we kind of look at people and we say like, oh, it would be great if this and this and this and this. And then when I see it like play out, and part of this is injuries, which you can't control, but it just feels like we have less depth than we think that we do. We at the beginning of the year, it seems like we have infinite depth. We had the full A squad, B squad of Conference League versus Premier League, and life was great. And then as we whittle it down to the end of this year, it feels like we have no depth at all. So it's just an interesting kind of like dichotomy of the way this team works.
So I know we're going to get into, well, oh shit, we're 45 minutes already. So I know we'll wrap these two together here because we're going to look at the outlook for the next two matches if we can make Champions League. If we do not make Champions League, I'm going to make the assertion that it was lost in January. Not bringing anybody in and selling all of your depth when you have a squad that's very injury prone, injury ridden. Not replacing Mudrik, who you knew was going to be out indefinitely. And then both your strikers get injured. I think it's lost in January. So if we do not make Champions League, is there a change in the quote unquote front office? Is there a change in sporting director?
Who's our sporting director?
It is Winstaley and Stewart.
I don't know. It seems like everyone is relatively insulated from a front office perspective. It seems like all of the reports that we've heard are this is part of the plan. This is kind of where things are, and we're okay, and the world isn't ending, and kind of all of these big statements about how things are fine. If I'm not mistaken, we're even on points last year, 63-63, if I remember right. So we have the potential of going 6 points clear of where we were last year. At the worst case scenario, we finish even on points. But if we finish even on points, we could finish in seventh. If we end on 63, we could easily be passed by Villa and Forest. And if we drop points to Forest, we're definitely losing to them. So it's like I think like people are going to view the place, not necessarily the points year over year. And if we take sixth, people are going to call it a push. And if we take fifth, people are going to look at it as an improvement, especially with fifth getting Champions League this year. So, I think one of the most unfortunate things that happened last year wasn't something that was in our control. It was the fact that United beat City in one of like the cup finals. I think it was the FA Cup final, which got them Europa League qualifications automatically, and then it dropped us to the Conference League. So I think that was one of the biggest things that happened to us last year that wasn't in our control. So that sucks. Uh, I don't think anyone. I don't think anyone changes. Even if we don't make Champions League, I don't think anything changes. I think Maresca's safe. I think the crew is safe. Blueco is kind of insulated at this stage, but we've talked about this before. But like the expectations are rising, and they're continuing to rise. And as a team full of 24-year-olds next year, they will continue to rise. Guys who have been now doing this 2-3 years together. And if we didn't make Champions League next year after not making it this year, heads are going to start to fall. People are going to start losing their job because now it's really not good enough. And really, like, you can only say this is part of the plan for so many times and years. Like now the plan is to get there.
Yeah, and obviously Blueco's not going anywhere. They've got that basically 10-year agreement of not selling the club. And it seems like Winstanley and Stewart are safe. I mean, there has never been talk of their job being in jeopardy, even though they're the ones calling the shots on transfers. They're the ones pushing the youth in terms of transfers. But I don't know. If we don't make Champions League, there's going to be a head that rolls, and I don't think it's Maresca. I think he's safe. I think they believe in him. Could it be one of those two? Could they get a move to another department within Blueco? Possibly. But I think a change will be made. There's enough infighting, it seems, among the owners that somebody will ask for blood.
Yeah.
But I just look at the other section, like the other sectors of Blueco. The women's team, invincible this year, which we don't talk enough about them. Congrats to them. Go first team to go the whole gambit here in the current format without a loss. You look at Strasbourg. Since Blueco has taken over Strasbourg, and they have similar PSR rules in France, they have gone from nothing to on the verge of a Champions League spot in a league that has PSG. They just beat PSG like 2 weeks ago. The youth is fine. Everything else is running efficiently except for us. So that leads me to believe that good things are to come. But at some point, you have to have accountability, and there has to be somebody who is sacrificed. And I think the logical decision is one of the sporting directors. Everything else, like a player doesn't count. The manager you've already done 3 times in 2 years. It has to be higher up.
Here's an interesting thought that I just had. Let me run it by you. With the advent of Maresca seemingly being more involved with transfers going forward, do you think they use that as kind of a guise of like, we'll get Maresca more involved in the transfers, and then they kind of release duties from one of those guys to kind of sell it politically of this isn't a firing or a demotion, but we don't need three people kind of as talking heads in this room. We just need two, and we're gonna kind of move that role to Maresca. It's his team.
I don't hate that. From everything I know or everything I've read up on Winstanley and Stewart is that they're smart guys. They're capable. Um, being being in a top six club might be a little bit much for them, but they scouting wise, they seem to know what they're doing. I don't hate that, but it also makes me worry of, well, then Maresca's head is on the block early next year. First month results aren't going their way, the smoke starts. And that's the last thing we need is another coaching shakeup, especially when there's no one good available.
I know it, but I think Maresca's going to be more involved in that transfer market. So Maresca's going to have that smoke coming his way. And I think the fact that and I've hated this. I've hated it because I want the manager to have say on the transfers that come in. I think not involving him is stupid. Like it just, I don't know. I have no idea what the level of communication that happens behind the scenes is. But I think you need to have your manager kind of let you know what you want to get, what type of player you want to get. And so having him be a part of it, I definitely think is the smart thing to do. But you're right. It does make him culpable for the results on the pitch even more so. You can't hide behind well, they didn't get me anyone, they didn't get me my guys. So it's like, but I think a coach like Maresca with his guys could build something really cool. So I'd rather run the risk. I'd rather risk being great than being safe and mediocre. Like I just think I want this team to compete at the highest level. I want them to push for the league, which we didn't do this year. I want them to go deep in tournaments. I want them to play in cup finals, and I want them to, have a squad that's deep enough to do so. And like you risk the manager for that being great. I think you absolutely have to do it.
So what do you think? We already talked about the striker position. What do you think his number one priority is in this squad? We've seen a lot of players playing out of position, quote unquote. We've seen a lot of guys be outcast from this squad. What is it that Enzo comes in and says, this is what I need. I need it now. This is priority A1.
I think if it was like the start of this season, it would be winger depth. And maybe it's this next season too. You just have too many wild cards with the young folks that we talked about earlier. But I think winger depth is like number one. I think center back depth is number two. I don't know what you do with this, but I think elite goalie is a position that we're missing today. So I don't know if that exists in our organization or not. But finding who our elite goalie is needs to be worked out. Those are the three major ones to me. I think guys like Enzo and Moy and Cole are safe. It's striker, it's winger, it's center back minus Levi, and Kukureya's safe. I think we're all right for right back ish. I don't know. It's just like there's a lot that I think we can make marginal improvements on. I don't think we have like major holes. I don't think we have major issues, but I think we have significant issues. And if let's say out of an 11 that plays on Friday, I think 5 of them we could make upgrades on.
Okay. That excuse me. I think that's fair. I would argue though that right back is probably, it's not my number one priority, but I think it's his. I don't think he trusts Reece James to stay healthy, which is a fair thing, absolutely. But even when Reece James does play, he hasn't been at his best. He needs, with the amount that he's been out, I think he needs another almost like 6 months to get up to full match fitness. And he sure as shit doesn't trust Malo Gusto. That guy can't get a start to save his life. Now Caicedo playing there it is what it is. he's done fine. Maresca gets praised for it when we win. He gets shat on when we lose when he does it. So I don't have an opinion either way. He does fine there. But I think finding an inverting right back or almost an all-out attacking wing back, like Jeremy Frimpong, would fit the system, and then allow Cucurella to invert in. But I would say that's probably his number one, just based on his lineups the last couple weeks.
Well, I think the lineup confusion kind of comes with having Lavia back too. I wonder how much of it is what you said, and how much of it is like finding a way to work Lavia in because he believes that that's more his natural position, and Moy can play anywhere, and Moy on the pitch is better than him not on the pitch. So he's our flex guy anywhere, can play literally anywhere, and then we put Lavia in to be the holder, that sort of defensive stopgap guy. So it could be one or the other. I don't know what the right answer is there, but that's kind of, I think about that too.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way of, how do you fit three great midfielders into a system that only calls for two? No, that's fair. All right. Well, we didn't get to it, but real quick here, gun to your head. We got 2 matches left. United, Nottingham Forest. We're on 63 points at the moment. How many points do we finish with, and what place?
I think we finished with 4. And I think that puts us probably in, it's 5th or 6th, right? Like, it depends on what Villa does, whether we're 5th or 6th, in my opinion. I don't really know who they have left. They've got Tottenham and United, so those are probably wins for them. So if we get 4, then I think we sit in 6th.
Yeah. I'm gonna go 6. 6 points. We get 6. Finish on that nice Rob Gronkowski number.
Nice.
And I think that puts us 5th. I don't think we move from where we are. But that's a big if.
So City need to get 4th to take us, and they've got Bournemouth and Fulham, it looks like. Yeah, and they probably have us on goal differential. If I'm actually, we're pretty tight on goal.
Yeah, if they were to lose a game, it would get real close, real quick.
Yeah, but I'm guessing draw win for City, so they're not dropping goals. Then we'd have to win by a healthy margin to compete on goal differential there.
But hey, just as a side note, I love Ruben Dias and his comments of Southampton didn't even try this week. Like, what a bunch of dicks, basically. Like, and you're in the Premier League and you're not even trying. City failed to score and drew with the historically worst team in Premier League history this week. So if they weren't even trying, what does that make Manchester City?
Yeah, I don't think City has a ton to play for either. And I'm guessing that they're kind of chalking this season up as a failure, which kind of shows you how, I'll call it, how far they've fallen from their glory days. But I think that 4th, when you won the league the last 4 years, is a failure. Like, there's no other way to say it. Like, they didn't compete, they didn't bring it, and they had a historically bad run for them, and not historic, but in the last 10 years, a historically bad run of form where they dropped points and lost to people that they never should have lost to.
Yeah, and they're going to finish the year with most likely 20 wins, less than 10 losses. Amazing.
Exactly. I hope Arsenal falls to 4th. That's just my goal. I want to see them fail because I love watching Arsenal fail.
Never the bride, always the bridesmaid.
I think that's a good place to end this one.
Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on social media at FlagDownPod. Again, to Matt, congratulations to Matt and Molly. Looking forward to meeting the new little one. And, of course, adding another member to the Flag Stays Down family. So, Parker, cheers. We'll talk next week.
Cheers, bro. We'll see you.
I can't stop recording. There you go.
I'm working on it.